Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Clash Royale with a really great video highlighting this LavaHound deck with the clone spell. Now you guys know I do the bounty challenge in these big 1k Brenchong tournaments. You can see the clone in action right there on the right side of your screen there. And the reason I did one yesterday was to really highlight what decks the clone spell actually fits best in. And I recorded it last night and then I noticed that Korn's deck really was head and shoulders above the rest. Korn is actually one of our underrated and one of our really honestly best players in all of Elite Gaming, and I decided to kind of do something differently. Rather than just highlight the tournament in real time, I previously recorded this footage last night and I decided to bring you some of his best matches. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. He ended up finishing around 25th overall, but he was in the top 10 for quite a while. I'll show the standings periodically throughout this video, but more importantly, I want you guys to walk away with a really intimate understanding of how to use the clone spell. More importantly, how to use the clone spell in this deck, specifically when to clone, in other words, the exact timing, and when that might change depending on what your opponent's doing in the battle. Sound good? All right, let's do it. So first of all, let's talk about the actual deck here. You can see on the bottom here, all of Korn's cards now are available for us to look at. He has the Tombstone. It's actually a basic LavaHound minor deck. Now, instead of the lightning spell, he has Fireball, and then that's allowed him to add in the clone spell in that other spot. So it's a very powerful and standard LavaHound deck. If you guys aren't familiar with basic LavaHound gameplay, I'll link a LavaHound Pro Tips episode I did maybe about a month ago now, but a lot of the tips are still actually valid. I did that as a pro tips with Dylan, who's unfortunately since quit the game, I think because of like schoolwork or something. So shout out to Dylan if you're still listening out there, man. We miss you in Elite Gaming. So you can see the deck, guys, that we're going to be covering today, and it's on the bottom of your screen right now. It has 3 spells. It has Fireball, Zap, and of course the clone spell. So let's talk briefly about the rest of the cards in the deck and how you're going to want to use them, and then of course the most of this episode will be revolving around specifically the clone spell and its relationship with the LavaHound. So the Fireball, obviously you guys know how to use Fireball. I don't have to really explain it to you. Zap spell is going to be reserved primarily for resetting Inferno Towers and of course kind of buying time or really going in for the punishing kill shot on a tower when you have the perfect combo executed, meaning the 2 LavaHounds, the cloned LavaHound. So this is, you can see Korn here, a 1,000-man tournament. He's doing really, really well with this deck. He's in 10th place this early on in the tournament right now, and he just continues to win, and then it was unfortunate because he was in, I think he was close to top 5, close to getting that $100. For those of you who don't know, basically I offer $100 if anybody can win these tournaments or come in top 3, rather, of these tournaments using a specific card. Now, no one actually did it using the clone spell, but granted, it's still super early, right? So you still have people leveling up their clone spell. Quite a few people, I'm sure a lot of you guys listening in, probably the majority of you guys don't have the clone spell yet. So hopefully you can bookmark this video, go back to it when you get the clone spell if you want to try it out with the LavaHound. So let's talk a little bit about the archers. Why the archers in the deck? I mean, that's another pretty obvious thing, but everybody's playing Graveyard right now, and archers really shine, along with minions, Minion Horde, Skeleton Army. Those are the best to use Ice Golem against Graveyard, so having archers is really crucial defensively. When you build a deck nowadays, you really have to account for what the meta is and make sure you include those really strong defensive cards. Otherwise, you have the Tombstone just producing those skeletons, and of course on defense to distract a tank on a beatdown deck. Obviously, you guys know how to use the Tombstone as well, and the Miner, of course, kind of swings in there on the tower that your LavaHound is targeting at the last moment, and it provides that distraction for the tower, tanking essentially for all your pups. So now that we've kind of gone over every other card in the deck, let's talk about the big fella, the LavaHound. So how do you use the LavaHound with the clone spell? When are you cloning the LavaHound? Are you always cloning the LavaHound? Let's kind of talk about it here, and we're going to go by what Korn did and what he had a lot of success with. So there's 2 ways essentially to combo the LavaHound and the clone spell. So the first way is as soon as the tower locks onto your first LavaHound, you go ahead and you clone it. And then the second LavaHound is essentially going to probably die because your opponent's probably going to have something that can pop a LavaHound. But what you're doing here is causing them to have to defend against the LavaHound and use all their counters on your cloned LavaHound first, and then they won't be able to cycle in time to counter your second LavaHound. Okay, so does that make sense? So basically, the first LavaHound, you know, it's almost a ruse in a way. Essentially, you're going to use it, the opponent's going to use, say, a Mega Minion against it or something, or a spell against it, and then the idea is they're probably going to be out of answers for the second LavaHound. Now, the other way to use it, you just saw right now, going on live in the right lane on your screen, and it's going to be towered down again for Corn. And the second way is waiting until the very last second, before that first LavaHound dies, and then you clone, and essentially you're swarming your opponent. You're really punishing your opponent if they don't have a counter up with all those pups all at the same time. Okay, so let's talk about when to use each method, and it's pretty basic, but let me kind of spell it out for you guys. The when to use the first method is if the opponent is sitting on their counter, their spell, their zap spell, their arrows, their fireball, whatever you think they're going to use to best counter your pups, not your hound, but your pups. If they're sitting on that and they don't use it, you can go ahead and clone right away as soon as it locks on, the first one locks onto the tower, because what you want to do is force them to use those arrows or that zap on the first cloned pups. If they don't have it in their hand and your LavaHound is about to die, you can clone as soon as he is about to die, and then you're going to swarm them because they don't have up in their cycle their zap spell or their arrows. So essentially you're baiting their arrows or their zap, and then you can clone right before death. Now in the deck that we're reviewing right now, that's rarely going to be the case. The only reason we saw that as the win condition in the previous battle is because the opponent had just dropped a golem in the lane that we were targeting, or that Corn was targeting, so he was able to punish him immediately with that quick clone spell. But mostly in this deck, because there's not a lot of zap bait or arrow bait, I mean, there's no princess, there's no minions, there's no minion horde. If you want to make more of a baity deck and use your clone at the last second and swarm your opponent with all the pups at the same time, you might want to go ahead and sub in minions or minion horde for the mega minion, and you might also want to consider subbing in princess for the archers if you want to make it more of a baity deck. With this deck though, you're primarily probably going to be cloning the LavaHound a little bit earlier, like I talked about previously, to the last second swarm tactic, so essentially making them defend against the LavaHound 2 times. So that is really the key to having success with the LavaHound clone combination. Now there is a third example of how to use it, and it's actually happening right now in the right lane on your screen. You can see Corn just used his clone spell. Why did he use it then? And the answer is pretty simple. If you rewind, you can tell easily, right? So his opponent kind of overcommitted. By the way, his opponent is Bacon and Eggs from Elite Nation 3. Shout out to Bacon and Eggs, and shout out to Elite Nation 3, one of our family clans, of course. But you can tell that Corn there knew that Bacon and Eggs had used the last of his elixir stores, and boom, he made him pay with the clone spell there, and now all he has to do is rinse, lather, and repeat on that right tower. And it looks like he's going to do so with the LavaHound again, basically repeating the same push there. 3 Musketeers is kind of a hassle against the LavaHound deck, but if you know they're coming, like Corn obviously does, you can just be patient with the LavaHound, especially if there's only 1 Musketeer targeting him. Defend against the 2 Musketeers in the other lane, and then worry about the LavaHound again. Makes him pay with a very last second split via the clone spell, and there it is. It's going to go into sudden death. He's not going to get the tower down right away here. Pretty good defense there by Bacon and Eggs, but you can see a LavaHound clone deck really shines in overtime. You can be relentless, and you don't even have to drop the LavaHound necessarily. You can just keep dropping the miner in the lane, comboing the miner, these quick little defensive spurts, and then you're going to be looking pretty good. So in overtime, against one of these faster kind of 3 Musketeers cycle decks, any deck that's trying to cycle to their win condition really fast against you, in overtime with this type of a deck, this LavaHound deck, you can be patient and defend, and then rely on making those counter pushes with the miner. You don't want to drop the LavaHound unless you know you have a really significant elixir advantage. So let's go ahead and move on. You can see at this point in the tournament, Corn doing pretty well still, but oh geez, Clash Gods, I pray to you, Clash Gods. Please give us more options for tournaments again. I like the old tournaments, guys, not gonna lie. I like that you could have huge tournaments. More importantly, I like that you could go ahead and adjust the length of the tournament, because when you're in a 1-hour tournament, even if you're a really good player, at this point, like I said, Corn hasn't even lost yet. He does lose one at the very end, but you know what? He hasn't even lost yet. He just keeps getting matched against people who are lower on the ladder, so he can't get those cups up to win the tournament. So if it was a 2-hour tournament, of course, you know, the cream would kind of rise to the top, so to speak, but just doesn't have the opportunity to do so. Don't want to get in a huge tournament rant, but we need better prizes and we need more options again. I really hope that Supercell considers making tournaments great again. So anyway, let's go to this last match that I'm going to share with you guys today. We're going to go ahead and look at him facing a Hog Rider, more control type deck. Has the Inferno Tower. I think it's really important to include a replay against the Inferno Tower, because obviously one of the best counters, one of the best hard counters to a LavaHound, but you can take advantage of even an opponent playing an Inferno Tower with the clone spell. We're gonna see how Corn does it. So starting off pretty defensively, pretty non-aggressive, so to speak. He's a pacifist. Corn is a pacifist to start out these battles, and what he wants to do is kind of vet out what the other opponent has in their deck. He wants to see all the cards, know what he's dealing with, still like basically halfway through the match, and he hasn't given any big pushes yet. So he knows the opponent's playing a Hog Rider deck. He's going to go ahead and defend, but a little bit late on that minor there. He really didn't have a good counter in his hand at that point, so not a beautiful start going into double elixir time, but like I told you in the last match, guys, double elixir overtime, that's where, or not overtime, but you know, the last minute and then on to overtime is really where you can absolutely drive in the stake into the opponent here. So here's the first big LavaHound push coming in your right-hand lane right now. There's the LavaHound, there's the Mega Minion, the immediate split here, and you're gonna see the miner going in is gonna distract that tower. There is a very good zap spell, but with that fireball, he's actually gonna get a decent amount of damage off of the opponent, and it's important to actually notice right now that, look, he still has more elixir than his opponent, and he's able to counter that Hog Rider. He didn't overcommit to the push, but he still did a good enough job, if I can speak, defending against the opponent. Wow, guys, I'm getting super excited here. Jeez, Ash, calm down, bro. So here comes another push in the right-hand lane. Again, it's going to be a very quick split, and that's really what I wanted to kind of get from this last replay for you guys, is if they have the Inferno Tower, you should go ahead and split right away, so that your LavaHound, that hopefully right before it gets targeted, you split using the clone spell, and then, you know, if you're lucky, the Inferno Tower will lock on to your cloned LavaHound before your real LavaHound, and then the rest of the pups might just go ahead and distract the Inferno Tower. If they don't, you can go ahead and zap the Inferno Tower and it'll retarget onto one of the cloned pups, buying more time for your actual LavaHound to stay alive and get to the tower. Now, I have a theory that I want to run by you guys, and my theory is, because when you use the clone spell to clone a LavaHound or any unit, the cloned unit always actually pops out to the right. It spawned the hologram to the right of the original unit, and because people primarily place their Inferno Tower more towards the center of the map, certainly not on the opposite side of the lane, I think it might be advantageous if you're a LavaHound player, or really any clone tank player. It can also apply to golem decks, or even giant skeleton decks. It might be smart to push the left lane instead of the right. So why? Well, I'm kind of just thinking out loud. This actually came to me while I was recording this video, but because the clone is always on the right, if you're cloning your LavaHound and you're going against an Inferno Tower, you'd rather have the Inferno Tower lock onto the cloned LavaHound before the real LavaHound, because the pups, as we just discussed, could distract. So it might make more sense. I haven't really tested this or ran it by anybody. I'm interested to hear your feedback. It might make more sense to target the left lane. That way, whatever your opponent's throwing at you will hit the cloned LavaHound before the real LavaHound, and it might buy you more time and ultimately more damage onto the tower. Just kind of thinking out loud there. Not sure if that is 100% legit, but I want to hear your feedback, guys. Otherwise, I hope you walk away from today's video with a better knowledge and understanding of how to use the clone spell for success, like Corn did in one of these LavaHound decks. So guys, thanks so much for watching, and as always, take care, guys.